All right, we're going to go ahead and get things started. Good evening and welcome. This is Pandemic Booms and Bust, presented by the Arizona Historical Society with our friends over at ASU and the Journal of the Plague Year. And our program tonight is supported by Arizona Humanities. As far as our AHS staff tonight, we're going to have Dr. James Burns, our Executive Director here, along with Robert Fleck, who's our Development Associate. And I'm Shelley Carell. I'm with Outreach and Membership for the Historical Society. A couple household items this evening. First of all, on the right-hand side of your screen, feel free to use that chat box to introduce yourself. And we're a small group tonight. We're going to have a good chance for a good Q&A. Because of the number of participants, we do want to honor the bandwidth gods. And so keep your video off and remain mute for the program. Robert is going to be recording the event and sending out the recording to all registered attendees. It will also be available on our YouTube channel. Finally, if you enjoyed this program, we invite you to become a member. Our programming for the past year has been free of charge to the public, most of the programs, and this is in part because we have fantastic support from AHS members. Our mission here at the Arizona Historical Society is to connect people through the power of Arizona history. And we are doing that tonight, and you're here doing it with us. We are thrilled that you are here and enabling us to carry out that important mission. The Arizona Historical Society is old. We've been around since 1864. We were founded by the territorial legislature. Right now, we have two flagship museums, the Arizona Heritage Center in Tempe and the Arizona History Museum in Tucson. We also have two historic properties that we operate as museums, Pioneer in Flagstaff and the beautiful and enchanting Sanguinetti House and Gardens in Yuma. So I already told you our mission is to connect people through the power of Arizona history, and we do that through a number of means. We collect, preserve, and tell Arizona's story through museum exhibitions, through our library and archives, at our historic sites, through educational programs like we're having tonight, and through our award-winning Journal of Arizona History. We invite you to stay connected. As I mentioned, we'd love to have you as a member. You can sign up for our non-spammy email list. We have a couple emails that go out every month that provide news and updates on history in Arizona. You can follow us on social media and order our license plate. We had a nice little storm today. For those of you who don't know, our monsoon officially started in Arizona last week on the 15th, and it was lovely to see the rain today. Our license plate celebrates monsoons because they are statewide, just like the Arizona Historical Society, and they're pretty powerful. And you can become a member, follow us on social media, and get all that stuff at our website, which is azhs.org. Our featured speakers today are Dr. Mark Thibault with the Journal of the Plague Year team and Aaron Kraft. Our guest speakers are Ruban Gonzales, the owner-operator.
Hello.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're on there. And Christine Espinoza with RE Max Residential Realty. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to my teammates.
James, is that you?
I am here, Robert. Yes, sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Do we have any further introductions, or are we ready to start with questions?
I think we're ready.
Okay, then we'll start off with Ruben. Ruben, I was wondering if you would tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in Arizona.
I'm actually born and raised native Arizonian. I am from Tolleson, Arizona on the West Valley. It's a little small farm town that's kind of been engulfed by industrial all around it now. And I've been in downtown Phoenix for about 17 years now. I live in the Coronado district, and I have a couple different businesses down here now.
That's what I understand. I'd love to hear more about those businesses and the communities that they serve. I think one of them is 11th Monkey Bar. Tell us about that.
So 11th Monkey was created through my dancing career. I was a dancer of 19 years, professional break dancer / studio dancer, danced with a company here. Unofficial company, Furious Styles Crew, and a couple different other groups, to a professional company called Nabel and Dance that actually did some stuff from ballet with people from Ballet, Arizona, to Scorpius Dance Company. And through those, it kind of created me within this other company called Nabelin, and just coming up with a clothing line, since we were always performing and traveling all across the country from North America, South America. They went to China a couple times. And it just was really into the whole graphic design, coming up as a hip hop artist in the backside of it, from graffiti art and whatnot, to transitioning that onto t-shirts and apparel and hats. And so I just one day found a screen printing press and stuff on Craigslist, and with the help of YouTube, learned, and some friends, I learned how to Photoshop and illustrate, and take my drawings from paper to the computer, vector them out, print them out on a screen, and start printing. I did the stuff with Roosevelt Road downtown for 10, 12 years. And through those years, I acquired a storefront. I went from being just a vending booth on the sidewalk into an actual storefront next to Tamiko Cookie on 4th Street in Roosevelt back in the day. And just slowly evolved, kept evolving and evolving, from t-shirts to small home production, manufacturing. We now make custom tables, beds, headboards, gates, fences, doors, you name it. We kind of do all of that through 11th Monkey, where it's kind of became a small business manufacturing shop with retail gallery. You also used to come in and you could take a class. You could take a screen printing class. You could learn how to woodwork and weld, and we would show you how to turn your hobby into your passion and your hobby into a business through our business. So I've done that for, I think I'm going on 15 years, 15 years in business, but 11 years as an actual storefront. And I'm now on Grand Avenue and 11th Ave. Yeah. So
you've seen a lot of change in these communities over time. It sounds like you've really been invested in that journey. And someone told me that you were once one of the first businesses in the Valley to begin creating masks during the pandemic too. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think I was. I don't want to take full responsibility or credit for that, but I saw, we saw something happening in the end of February, and I travel a lot for business too. I go to California, New York, Chicago, whatnot, just for my work. And we were just following the news of what was going on in New York City and just in general, and how it was kind of crossing across the country. And when we started seeing it get closer to home on the West Coast, we just took a precaution, and we actually closed towards the end of February, beginning of March. And then didn't really know what to do. We were kind of, I always say we, but it was just me. But I was freaking out because I'm listening to these stories of people closing, mandatory closures of all businesses. And I just saw my whole future kind of falling apart. Everything I've ever planned for or saved up for. I was in the middle of buying a house. I had my deposit, I had everything ready for me to start growing to the next level. And the pandemic hit. And so I put everything on pause, and I kind of just sat back for a couple of days and just sat in my shop and kind of dumbfounded and scared. Like I was like, I could lose everything in the matter of a couple months. And I just started, they started saying wear masks, wear anything to cover your face. They weren't sure if it was masks were going to work at that point. They were saying fabric doesn't work or this doesn't work, when then other people were saying just cover your face. And so I literally just started Googling what material can you use that would help you. And I'm not a scientist by any means, but I just started finding different materials that were just on different CDC websites, different medical websites, different fabric websites. And funny enough, a lot of those websites had a breakdown of what materials could be used and could not be used, or what they would advise or what they didn't advise. And it came down to some specific materials that I was able to get at SAS and on Amazon, just ordered online. And I designed my first mask with a napkin. I just kind of put it over my face, and I drew my facial, from my cheekbones to my ears, laid it out on a scanner, scanned it in, put some ear slots in it, and put them in my laser cutter. And it worked for me. It made me feel comfortable. So I just continued to knock them out. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting into. I just knew I wanted to make masks and distribute them. I think we donated over 20,000 masks to the Navajo Nation, to just businesses on Grand, and about 5,000 masks to the hospitals in general. And I just wanted people to have something to feel safe. And little did I know, it took off.
Wow. And so while you're doing all of that and trying to help so many communities in need, you yourself were going through a whole lot of changes. I understand you had plans to open another business right around the time that the pandemic struck. And you want to tell us a little bit about that business and how you got the idea for it, and when you decided to open it, and what happened, how you had to swivel as the pandemic got worse?
Well, it was really tricky. I was actually brought in, me and a partner at the time, we've since split, but the restaurant bar business was approached to us because we were throwing these community events at a neighborhood bar called Cobalt up the road on 7th Avenue, or on Central at Park Central Mall. We were doing a party called Hustle Tea Dance, and it was just an event where all walks of life could come in and just kind of hang out during the middle of a day on a Sunday, fun day kind of deal. And just intermingle, intermix, network, have some cocktails, dance to some fun disco, and then, go about your day after 7 o'clock, your day's kind of over, go home, get your dinner, whatnot, or continue going. So we were doing these events, and someone noticed that they were getting really good traction, and they're bringing in pretty good revenue for the space we were at. So we were approached by a third party to open a restaurant/bar and to move the event to that space. And at the time, COVID wasn't around. There was no idea that COVID was even coming. I was just manufacturing, printing t-shirts and making stuff in my shop. But I saw it as an opportunity to make a passive income. And my involvement in it was supposed to be to just be the builder. My sweat equity was to build out the restaurant, because this is what I already do. So I build out product and tables and stuff. So I was like, it was a no-brainer. Like, yeah, I don't got to put a lot of money down, and I just have to build everything and give you my time for the next 4 months. Okay. And so we started the process, me and the friend and the other investor. And, little did we know, 4 months into it, comes into February, March, and COVID hits. And at that point, the restaurant was pretty much turnkey, ready to go. But our main investor kind of pulled out. He kind of left. He didn't know what he wanted to do. So he just packed up and he went to LA. And just we had to kind of figure out what to do next, because we were in a 3-way partnership, and he had left, and me and my other partner were stuck. Like, what do we do? It's so close to being done. Like, what are we supposed to do? But we couldn't open, right? Because the governor did you can't open your restaurants or bars right now. So we just kind of talked with the landlords. We fell under the non-eviction stuff. And we just kept in communication with everybody that we needed to keep the space moving. We were still working very quietly behind the scenes with distributors, finding our own capital, our own income to keep the things going that we needed to keep going. And then ultimately, our initial investor completely wanted out. So, we did a little private deal, and he moved out, and we took it over. And by the time all that happened, we were in September of this past year, where they were starting to lift some of the restrictions due to go food, to go alcohol. And we just kind of went with it. It was like all or nothing. We got to this point where it was ready to be ran. We just need to see if it was going to work. It's either unlock those doors and start making food and selling drinks, or just keep them closed and walk away and lose it all. And we chose to go forward.
So what sort of things, this is an incredible story of resilience and perseverance. What kind of things became difficult because of COVID that typically wouldn't have been, that you had to think about as you were opening a new business?
Realistically, my first concern was safety. As soon as the pandemic did hit, I initially went to like doing the masks, closed my store. We were by appointment only and or just shipping direct. I didn't want any contact with people. So when the restaurant was getting to that point and getting back to being open, I took it extremely serious, probably more serious than a couple of my partners. But I basically built mini cubicles around every table and everything because I wanted us to open. I wanted people to see the space. But I in my heart, I kind of figured those that would support us would come out, and those that wouldn't. Because at that point, it was kind of people wanted to go out, people wanted to move around, but also they wanted to feel safe and protected. And so I did my best to give people peace of mind if they were coming in, even if they were just coming in to pick up food. You know, you'd come to the restaurant, you would send us a message or a text, our food runner would come out, everything sanitized, give you your food, and then off you go. If you came into the restaurant, you were sat well beyond 6 feet from people, you were plexiglass barrier apart. It was extremely difficult because this is our first pandemic and hopefully the last one that I'll have to live through. So we didn't know what was going to really work, what wasn't going to work. The CDC had specific guidelines, but they were still not sure. They were saying if you sneeze, it could go 6 feet, 10 feet, 3 feet. The stuff can stay on surfaces for 2 weeks or 24 hours. There was so much information that we didn't know what was fully correct and what wasn't. So we did the best of what we thought was going to be safe and comfortable for us and for our customers.
And I'm sure that resulted in a real revenue loss for you and certainly some economic hardship. But if it's not too personal to ask, would you talk a little bit about any human loss that you experienced during the pandemic, as so many people did, or any concerns that you had about it, and how it might have impacted your work, your confidence, your focus?
In the beginning, it was, people pass all the time. So in the beginning, when a couple of friends passed away, in my brain, it was just like, they just passed away. But I think the hard part about that in the beginning was we couldn't see them. We couldn't have a gathering. We couldn't have a visual. We couldn't go to a funeral. And I didn't understand why, because COVID was so new at that time. And I'm talking about literally the middle of March when it first happened in 2020. We're just like, why can't we go to a funeral? It doesn't make any sense. Like, we just want to say goodbye to our friend or our loved one or our family member, and we weren't allowed to. And we had to do things through Zoom like this or through a face chat. It was just very disconnected emotionally from human to human through that process of death. As COVID continued to move forward, it definitely got a lot harder. Just in general, I lost one of my best friends that I've known for 20 years. That was probably the hardest because that week prior, we were just about to open the restaurant. And we were going through our final inspection and our final permitting and all of those things. And this guy was one of the biggest reasons as to why I chose to move forward with this restaurant. So it was really difficult to want to continue with this, knowing that this person had just passed away. And his death wasn't even COVID related. So that made it even harder to not be able to be there with someone that you loved or loved you and that helped carry you through, not just with the industry Phoenix, but he saved me so many times with 11th Monkey as well. He was a business owner as well. He owned downtown salon in the Sheridan for a very long time and then sold it and kind of just retired and started having his own fun. And it was just extremely difficult to process human death, super close relationship deaths, and still try to function every day while you're alone. You're not connected to the world, and you're still trying to open a world back up. There was a lot of confusing moments in my life that didn't make any sense. And I just had other good friends around, like Todd, who's in this room, I believe, just continuously talk to you and help me and pushed me forward, showed me that, I have to do these things no matter what's the outcome. And just kind of helped kept me in line. It was hard. It was not easy at all.
I'm very sorry for your loss, and Ruben, I well know the person you're talking about and how much she had an impact on so many people in the community. So then I'm hoping the answer to this next question is going to be no, because you've gone through so much already. But I have to ask, did you then get COVID?
I did in the beginning of 2020, but it wasn't called COVID yet. There wasn't a name for it at that point. And it was the most painful thing I have ever felt in my body. I wish that upon no one. Breathing, talking, all the things that you would typically do, you couldn't focus, couldn't see, couldn't really move. It was just told in the beginning that it's just a migraine, or you have a bug and it'll pass. But they weren't testing for it at that point because it wasn't called COVID yet. They didn't know. Further down the road, when all the tests started becoming available, I did get the tests, and the one comes back positive, the other one comes back negative because you're negative now, and I made it through. But it definitely has its side effects. There's stuff that's not correct, and I know that inside my body. Breathing is still a little weird. I get this cough every day for periods of a time, and it's just, I've never had these things happen in my life since getting COVID back in March of last year.
So you could be what they are calling a long hauler. So a year and a half later, it still affects you.
Yeah, and it sucks, but I take extra precautions now. I still do wear a mask when needed, when I feel like I need to wear one. I have been vaccinated, but I think I'm pretty healthy. I go to my doctors all the time and do my checkups, but I just took a lot of extra precautions now. I do drink more orange juice. I do drink a lot of more hot tea. I'm a believer in bourbons and whiskeys. I think those to a degree. It made me change my life in a healthier way. So I guess in a way it was kind of good. But it also, it teaches you a lot of patience and a lot of what you can go through and still wind up on the other side of that mountain.
So, I mean, this is an awful lot to go through for anyone. And although I know you're going to be modest, you are known as someone who is pretty intrepid and fearless. But how did all of this affect your confidence about keeping industry open?
I mean, I didn't know if I was going through all of that and all the loss and just the COVID in general. And I'm still on the brink of 11th Monkey. I was actually robbed on Christmas Eve of this past year. So I finished that off. And so just really terrible Um, I I had a lot of sit downs with myself and some really good friends of what should I do? And a lot of the conversations were do whatever is the healthiest for you. I don't want to get sick from stressing myself out, but I am stubborn and I do fight really hard to make things work. I sell everything that I have to put money back into businesses because I've done it in the past and it's helped multiple times. Um, I didn't want to, I don't like giving up. I would rather my building blow up knowing that it's completely dismantled versus me just walking away because I couldn't figure out the stress or the situation. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I was raised to work hard and be smart about what you do.
Admirable qualities. Now, I have to ask because the pandemic has been polarizing in so many ways. Mask, don't mask. Vax, don't vax. Shut down entirely. Stay as open as possible. Did you receive any negativity or did you have any doubt personally about opening a bar during a pandemic?
I did. I fought it with my partner for a while. They wanted to open to a specific amount. I didn't want to. I very much care about a lot of all of our communities, and whether they believe in it or not. If I know that I'm doing my part to make sure that you're safe, and that's kind of how I feel better about what the decisions that I'm making, whether you believe in COVID or not. As long as I know I'm doing what I need to do to make you feel safe, that's all that mattered to me at that point. So getting the bar open, it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of we can't do this, we can do that. We shouldn't put a table there, we should put one here. How do we get a patio? How do we work with the city? How do we get grants and funds? And a lot of those things were really tricky because we actually opened in the pandemic. There was no
Mhm.
PPP money for us because we were not pre-existing. We literally
Right.
existed. We opened in September, October of 2020, with the money in our back pocket. We didn't get help from the city, from the state, from the government. We're still not getting help. Um, so it was very difficult. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
I
very, very.
think that's probably a good place to stop as we just reflect on the loss, the hardship, but also the thoughtfulness that you've had for the community, and turn it over to Mark to introduce our next guest, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. Thank you so much, Ruben.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Ruben. That's a compelling story. Um, so we're going to discuss now the real estate market here in the Phoenix area, and we're going to meet, and I'm going to ask her in a moment to tell us a little bit more about herself, but I'll briefly introduce her. Christine Espinoza. She's a realtor with Remax Fine Properties. She's been selling residential real estate in Scottsdale for 24 years, and her team, which is Helene and Christine's team, is one of the top ranked offices in her group, for Remax. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but she can tell us. And Christine, how'd you get into real estate? And tell us a little bit about yourself. Where, are you a native Arizonan?
Sure. I was born in Ohio, but we moved here when I was 6 years old. So I pretty much feel like a native. And even though I'm in the minority here, I did go to the University of Arizona where I graduated college. And right after I got out of college, I got my real estate license right away. So I was 22, I think, or 23. And my dad had been in real estate since I was born and had owned different real estate companies. And during college over the summers, I would work at his offices, and I've just been around it my whole life. So when I got my license, I worked with him at one of his companies, and we were a father-daughter team for the first few years that I was in the business.
And now your work is focused mostly in Scottsdale, correct?
Yes, I mean, with 24 years, I've literally sold homes in every city in Maricopa County. But for the last 10 years or so, I pretty much am in Scottsdale or Paradise Valley or Cave Creek, kind of the northeast part of the valley.
And so we're going to skip right to this kind of question that I've been wondering. Home buying is such a kind of tactile experience. You go into homes, you open your home when you're selling. So how does one show a house in a pandemic?
Well, it's different now, but when the pandemic first started and everything shut down, no one was going into houses. And then when we first started going into houses, it was a completely different situation. When I had a listing, normally when I have a listing, I put a lockbox on and I let other agents open the lockbox and bring their buyers through. But right at the beginning of the pandemic, for my listings, I would meet the buyers and their agents there. I would have a mask on. I had a supply of extra masks and rubber gloves, hand sanitizers. I would open the door for them. I would open the doors in the house. I'd open the cabinets. I pretty much was the one to touch everything in the house. And then after they left, I would go through and I would, with my sanitizer wipes, I would wipe down everything that they could have touched when we were there. So we were really, really careful. And that was for the people who were brave enough to actually go into the homes. There were a lot of people that didn't want to leave their house. And so I would do video walkthroughs with my phone. I'd either film a video or I get them on FaceTime and do walkthroughs with them on the phone.
And so did the market, did people continue to buy and sell in those first few months of the pandemic?
Well, Arizona, I think, is different than a lot of places. So we shut down for about a month where everything was shut down and no one was doing anything in terms of looking at houses. But it didn't take long. It was just over a month and people started coming to the realization that, okay, this is how it's going to be. This isn't going to blow over right away. And it was like the floodgates opened right after that. And everyone just pushed forward and the real estate market has been on fire ever since.
And so when you're back to this process, did people who were selling their houses, what did they do? I mean, did people stop selling briefly or did they just continue throughout?
Well, in the beginning, I had 5 transactions in escrow, so under contract, and 3 of them fell apart. I had one person that just got nervous because they didn't know what was happening with the world and they canceled their contract. Another couple were about to close. They were almost a week and a half away from closing, but they were in California and everything shut down in California. They couldn't even get movers. They couldn't leave their house. So their sale fell through, which made their sale here fall through. Well, we actually were able to postpone the closing for 2 months. And another couple just said they canceled, and they actually lost some money because they had put money into inspections and things like that, but they didn't want to take the risk of buying a property. It was a second home for them, so it wasn't a house that they had to live in. It was a second home, and they just canceled because it felt too risky with all the uncertainty in the world.
And so how did you, do you remember your feelings in this moment? That
Yes.
first month?
I was scared to death. It was really scary. I'm divorced. I have 2 boys that I take care of. And first thing it reminded me of back in, when the market went crazy in 2006 and 7, and then it crashed because I lived through that and lost a lot during that time. And I thought, oh my gosh, this could be happening again. And it was really, really scary. In fact, I had bought an expensive pair of shoes that I hadn't worn yet. And I went and took them right back because I thought, I'm not chancing this. I need to be careful and, make sure that I watch my dollars and cents right now because I didn't know what was going to happen.
And so when you were working with clients, did all clients respond the same? And I think when we talked before this, you mentioned something that older clients and younger clients seem to feel differently about engaging in
Right.
the market initially.
There was a big difference. I mean, there were some, and now when I say older, let's just say my definition of older keeps getting higher and higher, but like 70 plus, I would say. There were some people that it didn't bother them, but there were a lot of people in that age category that were trying to be extra careful. And so there were people who I was about to put their houses on the market who just said, no way, we're not going to do anything until they can, because they couldn't even go out and look for a new house because they were afraid to leave the house. Oops, sorry about that. I had a phone call coming in. So there, but it seemed like a lot of the younger people were fine. There were some that had family members that were maybe immune compromised or older, so they were more careful than others, always making sure they wore the masks. I had one couple who I had just recently traveled and got off an airplane a few days before, and they were being extremely careful because their dad was going through chemo. So I would open up the house for them and stay outside and stay, more than 6 feet away from them and let them go in the house without me even to look. So I just tried to be considerate of everyone's feelings, and whatever made them the most comfortable is what I would do.
And so during this month of kind of crisis, you take your shoes back to the store. What else did you do to sort of make sense of your business life or your home life? Because, as a single parent kid and with 2 kids, suddenly they're not in school anymore.
Right. So at first it was, okay, let me use this time, because normally this is March. So normally this is the busiest time in real estate. So at first, I said, okay, I'm going to take this time to do what I normally do over the summer when it's slower and really work on my business, like go through my website, clean up things that I didn't have time to do normally. So I was doing that in the hours that I would normally be showing houses and going on listing appointments. I was working on the things I don't normally have time to work on. I was picking up the phone and calling my clients just to check in and see how they're doing and how they're managing everything. And then on the positive side of things, I realized how just hectic and busy my life is. I've got 2 boys, they're in sports, and we're just go, go, go. It's like school, sports, homework, tutors. And you just get in this, hamster wheel, and it forced us all to slow down. And it was actually nice because we spent more quality time together. I bought us all bikes. We would bike around, bike and go get takeout at a restaurant, sit on the curb and eat it. We went hiking all the time. So it was kind of a good reset for me and my family, getting off that, just crazy life cycle.
And you mentioned to me a bit earlier that these calls in some ways were almost therapeutic. That you were making.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, as in real estate, because real estate's a people business, and we work on referrals, so it's always good to be touching base with your clients. And sometimes you have to force yourself to make the calls because it might feel uncomfortable, but it was really easy to make the calls during that time because I really did want to know how are you managing this? How are you doing? What are you doing with your kids? It's like you have your all day long, the kids are there, and what are you doing to entertain them? And so yeah, it was therapeutic and nice to be able to talk to my clients and kind of bounce ideas off of each other and just reach out and let them know that I cared.
I mean, I think that was human. I think for us here in the Journal of the Plague Year Archive, what we learned is that those human connections that we made around the pandemic have been surprisingly gratifying. And it's really interesting to hear you say that as well, or reconnections as the case might be.
Right.
The real estate market, though, did not disappear. It didn't crash as you feared. What happened next?
No, I never would have guessed that a pandemic would have just lit our Arizona real estate market on fire like it did. I mean, it was after the month and a half about of shutting down, before they even open up restaurants, my phone started ringing, and people realized this is how life's going to be for a while. We're going to still move forward. Interest rates are low. We want to take advantage of the interest rates. We are stuck at home. We're quarantined in our house. I have to work from home. I don't like this house. I've been ignoring it because I've been so busy, but I want a different house. Or people moving or wanting a second home who were in cold weather and quarantined. It made sense to come here because we had beautiful weather here and affordable housing. So it just turned on, and it hasn't stopped since. I mean, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the market in 2006 and 2007 when the prices skyrocketed and we had multiple offers. That's happening now. The good news is it's not happening for the same reason that it did back in 2006 and 2007. We don't have the bad loans. People have equity in their homes. So there's just such a demand here for other reasons, not just because people were getting easy money and buying houses because it was easy.
So I've heard that folks from California have been, some portion of that, small, but a significant portion has been moving to Arizona, which is one of the drivers for this boom in real estate.
Yes, California is the number one, like the highest percentage of people from another state. California is the number one highest percentage of the people that are coming in. And they're moving here from California for several reasons. I mean, it's a lot more affordable to live here. There, a lot of people in California are sick of the traffic. I've heard a lot of complaints about the politics since COVID hit. There's other complaints that Californians had as well. And so they're coming over here, and our prices are so much less than what they're used to paying. So they'll come in and, see a $500,000 house and offer 600, because 600 is still a lot less expensive than what they would pay back at home. So it's really driving the prices up tremendously.
And so, so you mentioned earlier that also the supply is lower here now, which is also driving the escalation.
The demand.
Yeah.
Yes, the supply it's just never been this low in history. We have all these people moving here, not just from California, but from all over the place. And we don't have enough new construction to keep up with the amount of people that we have moving here. So besides moving here for COVID reasons, I mean, we have companies that are, opening here, and they're bringing their employees in, and people are retiring and moving here. So we have a lot of people here, and we don't have enough houses for them. And so the supply has gone way, way down, thus forcing the demand up and prices up. Couple that with low interest rates, and that's where we're at today. Bidding wars.
And so your office even has had to come up with some unique strategies for dealing with bidding wars, right?
Right. Well, and it starts with the showings, because normally we put a lockbox on a house and let agents schedule the showings. And we ask our sellers, okay, when you get a request, leave the house for that hour while they're doing the showing. Well, sellers are getting 20, 30 requests in a day to see their house. So, and a lot of sellers are now working from home, or their kids are online in school, so they can't get out of their house. So what we've been doing is saying, okay, I just asked them, give me 3 days, give me a weekday and 2 weekend days. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and leave the house from 9 until 6 at night. And we let all the showings happen during those 3 days. And then we tell everybody when they're looking at the houses that we are showing it through the weekend. And if you want to make an offer, submit it by the end of the day, Sunday, and the seller will review them on Monday. And I show up to, meet with the seller on Monday and say, here's your 10 offers. Let's decide which one to pick. And that's pretty much what's been happening for the last, really, especially the last 5 to 6 months.
And so a lot of the work you're doing, like this program, is digital. And so I was wondering, is this digital revolution something that's happened just recently, or has it really just been accelerated by the pandemic? Or was the real estate market already, in some ways, buying and selling real estate already set up for a situation like the pandemic, so you could do many of the transactions electronically?
Sure. It was already set up for that. And I was utilizing video walkthroughs, digital signings. I was already doing all of that, but not every agent was, and not every seller or buyer was comfortable with that either. But everyone pretty much now, I mean, I think I've had to do one in person where they physically signed a contract last year. I mean, pretty much everything is done digitally. You can sign a purchase contract digitally, and you can even sign it from your phone. You can open up a smartphone and sign an initial document. It's so easy. The only thing that people have to do, they require one wet signature before closing. And what the title companies have done is they're sending notaries to the people's homes or to meet them wherever. And they sign all the paperwork there, and then they send it back and scan it. So, and I've had a lot of people buy houses without even seeing them until after they close. I mean, just video and walk through and sign everything digitally, and then they show up and get their keys. I had more of that last year, in the past year, than I've had in a long time. Well, not in a long time, than ever.
And do you think that'll continue?
I think it will. I don't think it'll be as much as this past year, but especially in certain parts of the valley where we have a lot of second homeowners, there's a lot of people that with a hot market like this, you can't see a house online and book a plane ticket and fly in a few days to look at it and see if you like it. There's no time, it'll be gone. So you have to make an offer right away based off of video, and that will still continue. But when the market softens, it will eventually. People may have more time to do more in person, but you can actually see a lot. I mean, it's better than just looking at photos. When I walk through a house with someone, I've got my phone and they'll say, "Oh, open up that pantry," or "Let me see in there." So I can really show them quite a bit with video. That's
amazing. And so if you've learned any lessons from the pandemic as a business owner, what would it be?
That's a good question. I mean, I've, as a business owner, and then just as a parent, and it's number one, to take our downtime and use it for, don't waste that downtime. I know that, some people could just sit there and watch TV all day because they have the downtime. But when you really take that downtime to do things, to work on your business, I think that's really important, because you're not wasting any time. You're making good use of that time. And also to reconnect with your family, the people living in the room next to you, to use times like that to really reassess and reestablish bonds and relationships. I think is, if something happened like this again, I would definitely do that again.
Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing the story of the real estate market.
You're welcome.
Crazy.
And so now I think Robert, we're going to take questions. Aaron, at some point we may ask you to show some images we have in the archive of businesses.
Okay.
Yep. So if anyone has any questions, comments, you can put those in the chat. Right now, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments.
I actually have one.
Oh,
I can kick off. So this is for Ruben. Christine mentioned some positives that she got out of the pandemic, the closing down. You had such a horribly rough year. Could you find any positive in that time?
I think I'm still finding it.
Mm-hmm.
It's still very rough. It's still very hard. It's just for me, it's the unknown factor still. It's not, we don't have buyers coming like Christine does, the way that works for them. And the industries are obviously different. What I'm finding is I put so much into my community, and I'm seeing them give it back right now. It's probably been like the coolest thing I've seen, because I don't ask people for help. I hate asking for help. I'm so stubborn. I literally will walk hundreds of miles before I get a ride. And to see people jump in and help because they see that I need the help has been one of the most positive reaffirming things, that what I'm doing it because I think it's what's right. And that really helps me that's what helps me keep moving forward mostly. That's a good positive. I've definitely gotten closer with, a bunch of friends because of it, because of making actual phone calls. I feel like most people, after a specific amount of time, you started to make a quarantine bubble, and you started sticking with a certain amount of people that you trusted, that you knew where they went when they left your home and when they were with you. And I love those connections. Like Christine, I'm a native from Arizona, but I discovered so much about this state that I never knew because I never had the time. I went on trails where there was maybe one other person for 6 hours, and that was something beautiful about that. Lakes and hiking and just rediscovering what it was like to kind of have freedom again. There was still the worrisome of financials, but to just go on these trips and put $20 in your gas and drive and come home, those are all really positive, affirming things as to, this is why I live in Arizona, and this is why I stay here, and this is why I fight for this state and for what I do, and for my community. I learned a lot about patience. I think that was my biggest thing. I've always thought I had pretty good patience, but I realized I hadn't. So this taught me a lot about that as well.
Okay, thank you. That's
Yeah,
great.
I love the answer too. Christine, did you develop a pod like
Oh,
Ruben
yes.
just described?
Yes. Well, one interesting thing, I've been in my neighborhood for 8 years and I only knew 2 neighbors. And then we would have these like we bring our chairs out on our street. And I met all these neighbors who I'm friends with now, who we just, crossed each other during the day and, did our thing and stuff. But now we're walking down the street, sitting around, and we'd order pizza to the curbside. And I connected with a lot of my neighbors, which was really cool. And who I was hanging out with when everything hit, there was a few, because my kids, they need to be around friends. So there was a few of their friends, and I became better friends with some of their friends' moms, because we did try to not, mix in with everybody, just to be careful. So yeah, I did. I developed new friendships and strengthened others.
That's excellent to hear. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything else they wanted to ask our speakers? Todd? You're on mute, Todd.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd. I am the special projects coordinator at the Heritage Center. So I work with James and Robert. And what a great interview. Thank you so much for giving your stories, everybody. Wow. I want to say, first of all, that I know Ruben personally, and he's very humble, but his work in the community and his history in the community is part of why people want to move here nowadays, because he goes back to the art walk back in the early days, the early 2000s, when the accident of the light rail meets ASU, and kaboom, you have the Coronado district. So these are amazing things that have happened since I moved back to Phoenix in 2006 that I love. I love, Christine, that like when I grew up here, there were only a couple different like styles of house that you could live in, like
Right.
there were only different floor plans. I love that, like you're doing what you're doing. It's I'm in awe of it, that Phoenix has grown up so much. And I sat at the museum the last few months at a COVID memorial every day. And I had some interesting stories that came to me from people that, you know, they'd lost their families. And I dealt with people that really didn't come there for that, you know, and found themselves in front of photos of deceased people and watch them process it and everything. And everybody has a story, you know, and that's the one thing that's gonna be so profound in this, is they're also so unique, and resilience is the common thread. So thank you so much for your interviews tonight, and keep on trucking.
Thanks, Todd. Anybody else have some questions want to ask or comments?
I do. I'd like
Yeah.
to know where your restaurant is, Ruben.
It's 607 West Osborne, Phoenix, Arizona 85013. So we're right on the corner of 7th Avenue and Osborne. We share a conjoining corner with Me Patio, Dark Hall Coffee, and Copper State Tattoo. It's a cute little corner. Safeway's across the street. There's a Sprouts, there's a Starbucks. So it's a very booming little corner. You go up, you know, half a mile, you're in the Melrose District. You go a mile south, you're in downtown Phoenix.
I love that area. Well, I was just down there last night for the Suns game.
Yeah. We are
But
showing-
next time I'll have to go to check your place out.
Yeah, come in and get some sliders and some burgers and watch the game.
Oh yeah.
Suns in 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've got a couple minutes left here. Does anyone else have any questions? Looks like I think we're all good then. Aaron, did we want to go over Joppy or?
So do you have a favorite, Aaron? Take us out with your favorite image about a pandemic boom or bust from the archive.
I picked out a few. I'll go ahead and share my screen. But someone just mentioned, like, thank you for sharing your stories. Jotp is a great place to do that. So I hope you all take a minute to go on there and share a personal story. Actually, this one pops up. This one's a great one. We have a lot of people submitting stories about how businesses transitioned quickly. So Ruben, you mentioned curbside takeout. You kind of made whatever you needed to work to keep your business going. And besides restaurants, we had things like hairstylists who set up in the streets of San Francisco outside. So they went ahead and did their haircuts just on the corner there. We have some businesses that are booming, such as golf. We have some businesses that were shut down. This is from Ottawa, an entire arts district. They had to close their doors for a month or two, and they all decorated their windows that were boarded up, which I thought was pretty amazing. And they did it to kind of keep, spirits high and things like that. So tons of stories in the archive about businesses, whether they succeeded, whether they're failing, stories of businesses closing, stories of businesses kind of like yours, Ruben, that just kind of trekked through and made it, hopefully making it out on the other side, and the things that they did to make that happen. So lots of good business stories in there.
Awesome.
And thank you, Ruben and Christine, too, because these interviews, this program, we're actually going to put in the archive. So it'll help crystallize some of these issues for future researchers. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you as well. Hopefully we don't have another pandemic.
Yes.
I don't need another.
Yeah, thank you, Christine and Ruben. And like similar to Mark said, we'll put this up on our YouTube on AHS in about a week or so. So look for that there too. And otherwise, I think we can wrap up then. Thank you guys. Thank you, Aaron and Mark too.
Thank you.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Have a great night.